It's a Tuesday in late October, and Della Train is standing on the shoulder of Route 20 outside Pecos, Texas, bleeding through a torn flannel shirt and holding a gas station receipt like it's the most important thing she owns. Because it's the only thing she owns. 3 nights of walking will do that to a person. She hadn't slept since Abilene. Hadn't eaten since the diner outside Van Horn, where a waitress slid her a plate of scrambled eggs and looked the other way. Her boots had rubbed through to raw skin somewhere around mile 40, but she stopped noticing pain about a day and a half ago. That's the thing nobody tells you about running for your life. After a while, your body stops asking questions and just moves. Her plan, if you could call it that, was to flag down anything with 4 wheels and a stranger behind it. Get west. Get invisible. Start over under a name she hadn't picked yet. Simple enough. Clean enough. But then she heard the engines. She counted them before she turned around. 5, maybe 6. The low, rolling thunder of motorcycles coming up the 2-lane. She pressed herself toward the guardrail, eyes down, trying to look like just another piece of Texas scrubland. Unremarkable, forgettable. Already gone. They slowed anyway. 6 men in dark leather vests pulled onto the shoulder in a loose arc around her. The kind of men that gas stations had signs for. The kind of men that made other people cross the street. Their colors read Gravel Saints, stitched in gold thread above a cracked compass rose. The one out front cut his engine and pulled off his helmet. 40s, jaw like a fence post, a long scar running from his left ear to his chin that looked like it had its own story. Della said the only thing that made sense to her in that moment. Just make it quick. She meant it. The man, she'd learn later his name was Ridge Maddox, didn't move right away. He studied her the way a person studies something that doesn't add up. His eyes dropped to her side, where the flannel had torn away, where the skin beneath was mottled, purple, and raw, where a crude mark had been pressed into her ribs like someone signing their name on something they thought they owned. He looked at it for a long time. Then he looked at her face. Whatever crossed his expression in that moment, it wasn't pity. It wasn't threat. It was something harder to name, the kind of stillness that lives just on the other side of recognition. Della didn't know what he recognized. She didn't have the energy to ask. Ridge looked back at his men. Terrence, the older one, gray beard, hands like a career mechanic, nodded once. That was enough. They brought her to a property outside Balmorhea, an old equipment shed converted into something between a workshop and a home. Della sat on a folding chair and didn't speak for about 40 minutes, while a woman named Jo cleaned her wounds and didn't ask a single question. Nobody asked questions. That was the first thing that broke her. She expected conditions. Expected to owe something before she was offered anything. Instead, they handed her a plate of rice and beans and left her alone with it. She cried for the first time in months. Over the following days, Della started talking. Not all at once. In pieces, the way you talk when you've spent a long time not being allowed to. She told Ridge about Deke Callahan, about the trucking yard outside Midland, about the crown mark and what it meant. That you belonged to him, that you carried his signature on your skin whether you wanted to or not. She'd been there 11 months. She stopped counting days somewhere around month 3. Ridge listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set something on the table between them. A photograph. Creased at the edges, handled too many times over too many years. A young woman, dark-haired, caught on a gas station surveillance camera at a rest stop outside Lubbock. On her wrist, just visible at the edge of the frame, a crown. Della looked up at him. Her name is Petra, he said. My sister. 4 years ago. He hadn't found her. But now, sitting across from a woman who had escaped what Petra couldn't, he finally knew where to look. One evening, after the fire in the yard had burned low, Ridge asked Della what she wanted. Not what she needed, not what she was going to do, what she actually wanted. Nobody had asked her that in a very long time. She thought about it until the last ember went dark. "I want him to lose what he thinks he can never lose," she finally said. Ridge looked at the coals for a long moment. "That's something we can work with." They rode out on a Wednesday. No moon, no conversation, just 6 sets of headlights cutting through the dark toward Midland. Della sat behind Ridge with her hands gripped into the sides of his vest, and she made herself a promise. Whatever happened at that trucking yard, she was going to watch it. She wasn't going to look away. She had looked away from too many things for too long. The yard was exactly what she remembered. Chain-link fence, 2 floodlights, a row of semi-cabs parked along the east wall like sleeping animals. Ridge cut the engines half a mile out. They walked the rest of the way. What she expected was Deke. His smirk, his voice, his complete and total certainty that the world owed him whatever he took from it. What she didn't expect was the shed behind the main office. Terrence found the padlock first. He looked back at Ridge. Ridge looked at Della, and something about the way his jaw tightened told her this wasn't part of the plan anymore. The door swung open. There were 4 women inside. Della's legs stopped working somewhere between the door frame and the back wall. She reached for the nearest shelf to stay upright, because she knew what she was looking at. She had been what she was looking at 11 months ago in a room very much like this one, counting the hours between each time the door opened. Ridge walked past her. He walked to the far corner, where a woman in a gray sweatshirt was sitting with her back against the wall, and her knees pulled to her chest. Small, dark-haired, maybe 25. He crouched down slowly in front of her. He said her name so quietly that Della almost didn't catch it. Petra. The woman looked up, the way people look up when they've stopped expecting anything good from a face they don't recognize. Then something moved behind her eyes. Something that had been very far away came rushing back all at once. She said one word. Ridge. Then they heard Deke's men. Boots on gravel. 4, maybe 5. A flashlight beam swinging across the yard from the main office, cutting toward the shed like someone had tripped a wire. Ridge put his hand up. His men stopped moving. The 2 groups stood maybe 30 feet apart in the dark. Deke's crew had guns out. The Saints had guns too, and Terrence had already shifted his weight in the way Della recognized meant this was about to go badly for everyone. Then Deke came around the corner. He looked exactly the same. That was the thing that hit her hardest. 11 months of her life, and he hadn't changed a single visible thing. Same jacket, same slow walk that said the world would wait for him. He scanned the yard, clocked the Saints, and smiled the way a man smiles when he thinks he already knows how something ends. He hadn't seen Della yet. She stepped out from behind Ridge before she knew she'd decided to. She heard Ridge say her name, sharp, low. She kept walking. 20 feet of empty gravel between her and Deke Callahan, and she crossed every inch of it without stopping. When he finally saw her face, the smile didn't disappear all at once. It left slowly, the way heat leaves a room, gradually, until the cold is all that's left. She didn't say anything to him. She turned sideways and lifted her shirt. She showed the mark to the men standing behind him. Not to Deke, to his men. To the 4 guys with guns who were looking at a woman in the dark in a yard with a padlocked shed behind her, and a crown pressed into her ribs that told them everything about what happened inside it. Nobody moved. Then a single shot cracked the air. A warning, not aimed, fired by someone whose nerve had broken in one direction or another. Gravel jumped 6 feet to Della's left. She didn't flinch. She just kept standing there. And that stillness did something that guns and numbers hadn't managed to do. One of Deke's men slowly lowered his weapon. He was 20 at most, and he was looking at the mark on Della's ribs, and not looking at anything else. Then the man beside him lowered his. Deke turned on them. "What are you?" "Enough." It was Petra's voice. She was standing in the shed doorway, one hand on the frame to hold herself upright, the gray sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. She looked at Deke the way you look at something you spent years being afraid of and have just now realized is smaller than you remembered. She said it again. "Enough." Nobody fired. Nobody moved toward anybody. Deke looked at his men, and his men looked at the ground. And the thing he'd built, the authority, the control, the whole architecture of fear that kept it running, cracked open right there in the dirt, like it had been waiting for one woman, with nothing left to lose, to stand still long enough to let it. 30 seconds later, they heard sirens on the highway. Terrence had made a call. He'd made it before they ever left Balmorhea. He'd told Ridge, who had told nobody else, because some plans only work if the people inside them don't think too hard about what happens next. Deke ran. Not fought off, not beaten. Just gone. Into the dark, toward the fence line. Alone. Which, Della thought, was probably the worst thing that could have happened to him, because now he'd spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder at the road behind him, wondering what was coming up. She knew exactly what that felt like. She hoped it was terrible. When Ridge came back outside 20 minutes later, he stood next to her by the fence and looked out at the flat, West Texas nothing. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "You know what's strange?" She waited. "I've been driving these roads for 4 years looking for her, and I never once came down Route 20. Della thought about the gas station receipt, still folded in her back pocket, the one from the truck stop in Van Horn, the one with her last $4 on it and nowhere useful to go. She almost laughed. "Funny how that works," she said. And that was all either of them needed to say. Because some things you can't plan for. Some things only happen when a person has lost everything, stepped out onto an empty highway, and stopped trying to control where the road goes. Della Train hadn't been saved that Tuesday in October. She had been aimed. If this story stayed with you, if some part of Della's road felt familiar, drop a word in the comments. Just one word. Whatever this left you with. And if you believe there are people out there still running, still looking for the road that leads somewhere worth going, share this. Someone in your life needs to hear it. We'll have another story for you in a couple of days. Until then, hold the line.